All right, Race Brain HYROX show. It's your boy Matt Mason, your host for today, and I've got a very special guest. She has competed in bodybuilding. She has competed in Ironman. She has competed in ultra trail running. She is also, some of you may be familiar with Captain America, but you may not be familiar with Captain Canada. She is the captain of Team Canada with a top 10 finish at HYROX Worlds last year. Today, we have Maria Fecik. Maria, how are you doing?
Hey, Matt. Nice to see you. I'm very good. Thank you for asking. Great introduction.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining the show. Before we jump into kind of our standard interview questions, got a little bit of an icebreaker for you. So Rich and I have been playing what we call celebrity over under. So we pick celebrities and then we set a line for what we think they could do a HYROX pro race in. And
Oh,
then
okay.
you say if you think that they could go over or under. And since you are our first guest from Canada, I have 3 famous Canadians that we will set an over under for, and you'll tell us if you think that they can go over or under that time. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, first one. We're going to just go. We're not even going to go athletics. Ryan Gosling seems like he might be kind of fit, but it's his first HYROX, so I'm going to set the over under at 80 minutes. You think Ryan Gosling goes over or under 80 minutes in a HYROX?
I think he will go over.
Over. Okay. What do you think, like you think like way over or just like a little bit over? Is he like on the line?
Just a little over. I mean, we're assuming fitness and the average finish time's around 90 minutes. Have a little faith in our boy. He's close to where I'm from in Burlington, so got to root for him a little bit.
Okay. All right. All right, I like that. I like that. So then the second one will go someone who has been in some awesome action movies and seems like back in the day may have been fit. Keanu Reeves. Let's go. I'll use the same logic there. We're going to assume fitness and we'll set it at an hour 23. So 83 minutes over under.
If he's anything like as fit as he is in like the Matrix, I'd give him an under.
Okay. All right. Under. I like that. All right. Last one. We're going to get into arguably one of the greatest athletes of all time, although never did a HYROX. And we're going to say in his prime, not current state. So not Lance Armstrong state, but like in his prime, Wayne Gretzky, because I know that you used to play hockey too. So we're going to go with the great one. Can the great one in his prime, could he have done a HYROX in, let's see, what did Nick Baer just do it in? 65, 40? So we're going to set the line at 66. Over or under for the great one in his prime?
I would say just under
Just
in his prime.
under. Okay, I like it. I like it. Awesome. Well, so I think we should start there, Maria. So you're I think it's interesting because you've actually done a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess where did you start? Like, did you grow up playing? I mean, obviously you're Canadian. Did you grow up playing hockey? Is it true that they just like put you on skates at 18 months old and like you just like take off, or how does that work?
Yeah, I started actually in figure skating. So still
Okay.
skate, but different kind. Never was like overly the graceful kind. So left figure skating and started playing hockey at a young age. Started in playing goalie after house league, after one season of house league, and then I did really well in my first game as a goalie. I think I got a shutout. And then from there I
No
stayed
big
on
deal.
playing goalie. I know. I felt like it was like meant to be. So it was a good sign. So I ended up just playing, I played rep goalie, hockey for about 4 years, all through like high school. And that was kind of like the bulk of my, like what I played. I dedicated all my time to playing hockey, growing up.
So it makes sense why you are so strong in some of the stations and HYROX because I have never met a hockey player who didn't have just pistons for legs. Just
Yeah.
strong, strong base. So that makes sense. Okay, so you played hockey growing up, and then you went into, what did you go into first? Did you go into bodybuilding first, or did you go into running first?
I went into bodybuilding first. So I was in college. I went to university. So anybody that's Canadian, I went to Western University. And I got into bodybuilding there. And I dropped about, I think it was like 60 pounds to jump on stage. So I was historically a little overweight, had this dramatic transformation, dropped 60 pounds in like 6 months, and jumped on a bodybuilding stage for my first time at 19. And I did that for about 3 years up until about 21 years old, which then we'll get into, I'm sure, but I transitioned into endurance sports such as triathlon.
Okay. So what was the impetus to go from, because obviously every sport that you've done takes an insane amount of dedication. I have
Yeah.
friends that are bodybuilders, and like it is bodybuilding is not for the faint of heart. Besides the fact that the training is like crazy, like to your point, in order to cut that weight, like you have to be meticulous about your diet. Like that takes a lot of commitment. But on the other side, so does the endurance sports, specifically triathlon and ultra running. So what was the impetus to go from like one extreme of like the like bulking, like lifting heavy, to just like pure endurance? Like what inspired you to make that jump?
Yeah. I think where there's a good overlap is exactly what you said, like that discipline and meticulous approach to training, nutrition, etc. So I found that I had that discipline through my bodybuilding years. But then I realized like it's very aesthetically driven industry. And I think from like a mental health perspective, it can present some challenges. So I found being so young and impressionable, I'm like 19, lost all this weight, had a six pack, like there was so much physical transformation. There wasn't a ton of like mental transformation. So it was like created a lot of challenges in terms of like, I'd say like some body dysmorphia and stuff like that. And that's my experience with it. And I know that's a pretty prevalent experience across other people that I've talked to that have come out of that industry. So I wanted something more focused on kind of what my body did versus how it looked like. So that was the impetus for me to go into more endurance based training and performance.
Okay. That's interesting. So that definitely makes sense. Like I could see I often struggle with body image, and so like that is one reason why I never well, other than the fact that like the meticulous diet, like that is one reason why I never gave it a go, because I could just see that going poorly for me. But I'm curious, like how did you, just knowing that you dealt with some of that, how did you block out that noise transitioning to endurance sports? Because endurance sports can sometimes lend to body dysmorphia in the
Mhm.
other way. Whereas, like, obviously, bodybuilding is all about, like, having the six pack, being strong, like being jacked. Endurance sports can sometimes almost over index the other way of like, I need to be really thin, or I need to be like very light. So, just, I mean, as much as you're comfortable with sharing, like, how did you, I guess, kind of guard against that going from one to the next?
Yeah, I think like coming out of like the bodybuilding industry and feeling so much critique on, you know, everything from like how tight my core was, how tight my glutes were, if my quads were overdeveloped, like that much critique, if my suit looked good, if they liked my tan, to reframing to, okay, I know I have the discipline, I know I have the motivation and drive to do really hard things. What's another way that I can channel that that'll help more with like my mental health in terms of not showing up and worrying like, do I have any cellulite on stage that people are seeing? And I'd really reframe it to what can my body do? What would be a really cool goal for me? And then getting out of that bodybuilding industry, I think was actually very helpful for me. And I got into an industry where, again, all industries have their own little bubbles and all that stuff, right? But I reframed things from what does it look like to what can I do and what would be a really cool goal and how can I prove to myself that it doesn't always necessarily matter what I look like, but how can my body perform? And really reframe goals from like aesthetically driven to performance driven. And that's done like a big 360 for me for like my mental health and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that message of like being proud of what your body is capable of doing instead of like what it looks like. I think that that's something that we probably need. I mean, in all sports, but like in athletics, I think that's definitely something that we need more of. So I love that message. That's great. So what did you get into first? Was it the trail running or was it Ironman?
I got into Ironman. I had a couple guy friends that I was working with when I was younger at a restaurant, and we all talked about doing an Ironman, and we kind of signed up on a whim, and then kind of dove into what that training looked like. And it is full Ironman is a lot of work and a lot of time, but very, very rewarding at the finish line.
My wife often jokes that if I ever sign up for an Ironman, it might be time to get a divorce because the amount of time that I spend training for a HYROX, let alone an Ironman, which is just as insane. So how many Ironmen have you completed?
I've done like one full, like
Okay.
140-mile Ironman, and then a couple halves, so 70.3s.
Couple 10 mans. Did a couple 10 mans, got the 10 mans out of the way, and a couple Ironmans. That's awesome. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. And then I'm assuming like just the natural progression here. So out of you did Ironman
Yeah.
or did several Ironman. And then I'm going to go out on a limb here. Out of the three modalities, was running the thing that you were best at?
Yeah. You
Okay.
got that right.
All right. So now
I
we have to ask, when you did your Ironman, what was your marathon time?
This was before that was my first full marathon running in an Ironman.
Oh, wow. So you went all okay, holy shit. Okay. So you like went all the way in. So like
Oh yeah.
all right, so you did okay. There was no like, hey, I've run a marathon before. It was like
No.
we're doing the 140.2 right out of the gate, 2 mile swim. What is that?
Oh yeah.
100
Like
mile
0 to
bike?
100.
Yeah,
It
112 mile
is,
bike.
yeah, 112-mile bike.
Damn.
Yeah, and I did it in Whistler, BC. So if you know Canada, it's like our very mountainous region.
Like the most beautiful place in the world.
It is the most beautiful place in the world. So that was really cool. So you finished in Whistler Village, which is like their little
This is
ski
so dope.
village downtown. Which was sick. Like it was the best. So I went from like literally like 0 to 100. And I remember I met a triathlon coach along the way, and I was telling him my aspirations for a full Ironman. And I remember he was like, okay, yeah, I think, in about 16 months, like that's doable. And I'm like, what about 6 months? Because I've already signed up. And so it was quite the experience learning how to swim and all that.
That's actually that's really my biggest fear in competing in Ironman is I'm I'm actually pretty good on the bike. I'm okay at running. I'm like not the best swimmer, and that is a daunting distance to get good at. So I guess like a little bit of a tangent, and I'm almost jumping ahead slightly, but you got into HYROX because of someone who has gotten a lot of people into HYROX, Mark Howe, and Mark Howe
Yes.
was training with your husband Mike for a triathlon. So did you meet Mike through Ironman training?
Yeah, I met my husband. I actually hired him for one of my 70.3s. Um,
Nice. Maria hired him and then slid in there. She was like, hell
yeah,
yeah.
hired him
That's
and then
amazing.
married him.
Oh, yeah. That's the way to do it. I mean, that's
You're
an
right.
awesome love story. So does Mike also compete? Or did he also compete in triathlons, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so Mike did triathlon for like, I think we calculated yesterday, like 15 years.
Oh,
He
wow.
did, that's how
So
we
he's probably
started
got like
coaching.
he's got the coolest bikes in the neighborhood for sure.
He did, but he sold all his bikes now.
Oh, no.
I know.
Oh, man,
I
that's sad.
know.
15
Um,
years, though, that's commitment.
yeah, he did like so many 70.3s. He's done a couple fulls, but he liked 70.3. I think more for like just the speed of it. And then
Yeah, yeah.
also he got to a point where he, hit his goal. I think his goal was like a sub 430 on a 70.3. And then past that, he was like, I don't really know what else I want to do. So it was a big decision for him, but he transitioned to running ultra trail and now HYROX as well.
Okay, I mean, I have not had the pleasure of meeting Mike yet, but just for those of you that may not be familiar with Ironman or half Ironman, a sub 430 is moving. That
Yeah.
is a very good time. I think the world record for 70.3 men is like 336 or like 340. So like sub 430 is, I mean, that's insane. That's probably, let's see, if BK is listening to this, he can correct me later. I'm pretty sure a 430 and 70.3 would be the equivalent. What's the male world record is like 53 right now. So like that would be like a 58 or like a 59 HYROX. Like that is good. That's
Yeah.
very good. That is like borderline elite time. So that's awesome. Well, that's cool. Okay, so you got into the you did triathlon, and then from
Mhm.
there, obviously, you decided or knew, hey, I'm a good runner. So did you ever do a road marathon, or did you just say, again, because you seem like you're kind of an all or nothing girl, you were like, why do a marathon when I could do ultra trails?
Yeah, I did do one marathon with the hope of qualifying for Boston,
Okay.
which I did, but I didn't get in because it was the first year where they eventually changed their standard the following year because so many people qualified. So I qualified with like a 2 minutes and 30-second gap. So I thought for sure I was gonna get in.
What was your time?
Uh, I think I was like a 3:31
Yeah. See, they've
ish.
actually now the standard is lower than that. You could get in,
Yes.
or it's higher. No, sorry, it's actually higher than that because you're
Yes.
35, right? You could get in
I'm
easy.
35.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
get in easy.
Now I could probably run a lot quicker, but yeah, at the time I hit the standard and below it, and had a gap, and so I was like super bummed that I didn't get into Boston. It's still a dream of mine one day, so I'm sure I'll do it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, so you got into you did trail running. Well, we'll just for the sake of time, we'll kind of skip ahead here. So then, you were looking for something different, and Mike was training Mark,
Mhm.
and like I said, if you don't know Mark Howe and Lauren Rontala, they have literally probably gotten 50% of the people in HYROX into HYROX. They're like the OGs. So shout out to them. What attracted you? I'm curious, like other than just like looking for something different, what attracted you to HYROX? Because what I hear is like bodybuilding takes an insane amount of time and preparation. Ironman takes an insane amount of time and preparation. Marathon running, ultra trail running takes an insane, like it seems like you kind of liked or enjoyed like the longer domains. And yes, HYROX in the world of hybrid is definitely not the, that, or it's definitely longer than like say a DecaFit, but it's an hour. I mean, for someone as good as you, it's an hour to an hour 10. So
Yep.
significantly less time than what you're spending and what you're doing previously. So other than just like looking for a change, what was the draw specifically to HYROX?
I think the problem is when you get into like such long distance endurance sports and spend so much time in one discipline, you lose other components of fitness. So when I was coming off of ultra running, I could no longer do pull-ups like I could when I was bodybuilding. I could no longer do like 25 push-ups unbroken in a row. Like there were so many elements that it was really cool for ultra running and having that experience and saying I ran 50 miles and all that stuff. But then when I'd come back to the gym, I had zero strength and like zero ability. And I think I started to reframe what fitness meant to me. And it was like feeling really good in my body, feeling strong and feeling fast. And that's what HYROX has given me. And I'm the strongest and fastest I've ever been in my entire like racing career. So I think what it's given me is like that new sense of like what it means to be fit. Cause for me now it's not only being able to run far or run fast, it's like still being strong. Um, and I think that was a component that was missing for me in endurance sport.
Got it. Got it. Now, you have a business with your husband, the Holistic Athlete, correct?
Yes.
Did that come before HYROX or after?
It came after HYROX. Mike had always had his own coaching business, but he's always wanted me to come on as a coach as well. So I ended up like leaving my full-time job in March to come on full-time as a coach, which is super exciting. So we've been growing our
Congrats.
business
That's
ever
amazing.
since. Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. Okay, so you got into HYROX and you and Mike actually did a mixed doubles together twice in
Mhm.
2022. You did New York and then you did Vegas. Then you did your
Yep.
first solo. You ran a 69 open, which is a great
Mhm.
first time. And then you went to Dallas 2022, got fourth overall with a 75, which back then, just for those listening, 75 was, I mean, it still is a very good, still a very good pro time, but back then was very good. And then you kind of, um, I would say like chipped away, you did a 112, but then I think it's probably fair to say like when you put your name on the map, so to speak, was Manchester 2023 World Champions or World Championships, where you actually ran a 66, which had you run that before Manchester, probably would have gotten you into the Elite 15 field, if I recall that year. That was definitely that definitely would have been an Elite 15 time that season. And I believe you got second only to Camila. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was, I exceeded expectations on that one. Because my
So you
prior
didn't you
race was
didn't
a
know that you
112.
didn't know you had that dog. I mean, you knew you had that dog in you, but you didn't know you had that dog in you.
Yeah, 100%. When I crossed the finish line, I was like, holy shit, like I could be good at this.
Okay, so that
And
was
yeah.
the moment. That was the moment that you were like, "Oh, I could be good at this." So you didn't.
Mhm.
That I mean, obviously, you wanted to do well. No one travels overseas to race a HYROX to not do well. So you wanted to do well, but you weren't necessarily thinking, "Oh, I could be an Elite 15 athlete" at that point in time.
Not yet. Yeah.
Okay, okay. What do you think? And that because that's a pretty big breakthrough. Um, especially so that's 6 minutes from Dallas 2023 to actually it's more than 6 minutes. It's almost 6.5 minutes from Dallas 2023 to Manchester, which would have only been a few months, if I recall.
Mhm.
Between that, what did and you had to travel overseas. I mean, you do live in Toronto, but that's still 5 or 6 hours ahead of you. You got to travel. Like, what did you do differently leading up to that you felt like led to that breakthrough?
I did hire a coach. So I hired Tiago Losa, is who I
Okay.
started coaching. I did his group coaching program to start. And I think the biggest thing that I learned was that I wasn't pushing myself enough in the runs.
Got it.
And that's what that program gave me, I think, was like the biggest takeaway was like that fine line between pushing too hard but pushing just enough. And so it really built my confidence, and like I just kept pushing race pace and stuff. So I think that was like the biggest mover for me, was knowing how far to push, how hard to push.
Awesome. And I guess on that note, one thing that I think is interesting is so you worked with Tiago, who is a great coach. I believe at one point you were working with Meg, correct?
Yep.
And now you're working with I mean, gosh, the hybrid engine is taking over the elite women's field. So that's three probably very different approaches to training. And obviously you
Mhm.
have your own coaching business as well. And so we have a lot of people who listen to this show who are, everyday age group athletes. And I guess what advice would you give to them when they're considering potentially working with a coach, or just because you do have that experience of having, probably trained in different methods and modalities?
Yeah, I think every coach has like their own philosophy and their own kind of like perspective on how to train for things. And there's so many different ways to train for HYROX as well, which I think is really important to note. I think for you, you just have to figure out, which coach fits your own personal philosophy best. And then also, I think like experiencing multiple ways to train is also really important, and to see what garners the best results for you, your physiology, your body, I think is also really important. So I think like doing research, talking to a few different coaches, seeing the way that they train, see if it makes sense for you and your lifestyle, I think are ways to also, or criteria to consider when you are looking at coaches as well. And then talk to other athletes that work with them.
Cool. That's great. So you then coming into the next season, which would have been last year,
Mhm.
uh, you got another PR. Or so you got. Wait, am I okay? Hold on, I'm now mixed up. Okay, we went from Manchester. Okay, here we go. We're back. All right. So you did Manchester. You did a 66. Then you raced over in Madrid. You got into the elite field for the first time, Chicago, November of last year, where you
Mhm.
ran we'll call it a 69. It was 108.58. Dallas a 107. Los Angeles, which seems to be a good place for you. We'll get to that in a
Mhm.
second. You ran. That's when you got your PR of a 65. Then you
Yep.
ran in the DC major, and then one of the coolest races, this is one of my favorite memories from last year, was the LCQ Last Chance Qualifier. For those of you that weren't there, I was standing in the stands watching the women's race, and here came Maria and just absolutely wall ball their ass off to get across the line and get the last chance qualifier spot to get into Nice. And then she got mobbed. When I say mobbed, I mean mobbed on stage by Camila, by Kara Mobley, by her husband. Like, I mean, it was just like a pile of humans just like all screaming and crying. And it was like this amazing thing. What was that experience like for you personally? I'm sure it felt great. You've got all your best friends, your husband, like your competitors just like cheering for you. What was that moment like?
It honestly was probably like the best moment of last season in its entirety. I think because I came from, I don't know if I'm going to do it. I remember running into the wall balls being like, okay, you got to make magic happen here. Otherwise, it's not happening. And then when I had this realization, like, oh my God, I'm doing it, I'm doing it, I'm doing it, they caught like really good footage of that moment as well. And it was such a genuine like joy and excitement. And I can't believe I did that feeling. That was one of like the best feelings of the season, even more so than racing in the elite championships. But it was just like, I can't believe I did that. And it just was like the cherry on top to have like really great competitors there with me as well, like encouraging me, as and encouraging me like when I crossed the finish line, hugging me, being really happy for me and sharing that joy. And then obviously having Kara there as my best friend in the whole wide world, and my husband was like one of the best experiences for sure.
Yeah, it was super cool. This is like the first time I've had a conversation with Maria, so she didn't know me before this, but I remember like getting tears in my eyes like watching it in the stands, because it was just like you could just see the raw emotion and like how much it meant to Maria, but like how much it meant to the people supporting her, which is also cool. Like I think most people would say like that's our favorite part about HYROX is the community, and like yes, it's competitive, but like everybody's happy for their people when they succeed. And I think that's so cool. So you got into Nice. Were you at that time, were you already captain of Team Canada, or is that what solidified you as captain of Team Canada?
I think it was after that that I
Okay,
got
so
an
it's after.
email. Yeah,
So you were already going. You were going to be there no matter what.
yeah.
That's awesome. What was that like for you? I mean, obviously, to probably I imagine like an intense amount of pride to be able to be to captain for your home country at World Championships.
Yeah, it was a really, really cool experience. Being selected for that obviously was really, really cool. Such an honor to represent Canada as well, and also be somebody that helps us put Canada on the map in the hybrid space. And then I got to meet a lot of really cool Canadians that tried out for the team and submitted videos and stuff. So that whole experience was really, really neat. And end up having a really solid team of people that are now good friends of mine. And yeah, it was a really, really great experience. And I hope to do it again this Worlds in Chicago.
Yeah, you all ran an awesome time, finishing seventh overall. I believe there was either 20 or 22 teams in that race with a very fast 53:25. Also on that weekend, not to be overshadowed, you had a top 10 finish in the elite women's field with a 69. And I think that was kind of the moment that everybody started talking about, like, okay, next season, like Maria is somebody that you've definitely got to watch out for.
Mhm.
And you immediately backed that up with again, a kind of another breakthrough with a big PR in we'll call it your hometown, although I don't know if you'd call it your hometown, with Toronto with a 62. Tell us about that race. What was that like, being able to run such a big PR and basically in your home turf?
It was honestly a remarkable experience. I think not only like hitting such a big PB from what I've been really working hard towards, it was also having a lot of like my friends and family that don't necessarily get to see what HYROX is like. They don't see like what the result is from all like the hard work. They just know that I'm always at the gym, I'm always running, I'm always training, but they never get to actually experience like the outcome and what I'm training for. So it's really special to have a lot of like my good friends, actually friends that I've trail run with. So a lot of them came and watched, and my best friends got to watch as well, and they got to see like what it's all about and gain a new perspective on HYROX and like what I'm working towards. So that was also really special.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say? Was it just like more time on task over the summer? Like, because that's a, again, that's like, I think 2.5, that's a 2.5 minute improvement over your previous best time. Like, what would you attribute that to other than having the, likely the adrenaline of, of racing in front of your friends and family?
I think like also having like a really solid race plan, something that I knew what I was trying to execute to give me some guidance on how hard to push, and when to pull back on certain stations was super helpful as well. And then obviously all the training that goes into it. I've been doing a lot of like threshold work, a lot of work on the ergs. So I think like from a running perspective, I feel really, really strong. And that's probably been like a big improvement for me.
And with that, you have since then run two 104s, which we will get into. But more importantly, it looks like, if I'm doing the math right, your average time is now, because you need 2 times to Elite 15, is 1 hour, 3 minutes, 26 seconds,
Mhm.
which is going to put you, is actually going to, it's going to move you up. You should be, see, some of these times might fall off for some people, but you're going to be like kind of right there on the edge of that Elite 15, that
Mhm.
Elite 15 time. Um, so I guess let's kind of get into that. So you ran Chicago, which
Yep.
we did a big, or not a big, but we did do a debrief of that on Race Brain. The women's race, for those of you that aren't familiar, was not as quick as the men's race, not because of the athletes, but because I have never seen so many people on course at one point in time. It was wild. So for those of you that weren't there, Maria was having to contend with, I think that there was mixed doubles on the course. I think that um, there was still some men on the course. There was shortly after they went on, there was women's doubles on the course. So we had lots of teams. It was very crowded. But you ran a very strong race against Jennifer Thompson with that 104 time. But I think what's almost more impressive to me is a week later, you just happened to be in Dallas. And according to your Instagram, we're not planning on racing. And actually, your coach, Anthony Parasini, had given you the option of you could do a 75-minute sim, which sounds terrible for someone who's capable of running a 62. I don't even know what a 75-minute sim looks like for someone who can actually compete a whole HYROX faster than that, and then probably, be cooled down at that point. But you decided to race, and then you effectively did the same thing again, which, I'm sure, on the one hand, probably is a little bit annoying that you hit the same time, but on the other hand, speaks to how fit you are, that less than 7 days later, on some probably very tired legs, you were able to basically put up the same time on a course that actually that one was slower. So whereas I think we've done the math. I won't give it away. Jack will fill everybody in on the time, but Dallas actually was turns out to be one of the harder courses on the year in terms of percent of expected finish. So I guess talk to us a little bit. That's a long way of saying, like, talk to us a little bit about those two performances, kind of breaking through that 64 barrier, which you had talked about on your Instagram, and kind of how you feel coming out of those two races.
Yeah, I think Chicago, I was more disappointed in the outcome originally. I think, I had high expectations for the race. I think also I didn't feel as good on it as I kind of wish I hoped. My station times were slower than what I had expectations for, which I think really impacted me. And I think it was just an off day for me. So that was a hard one, I think. And then when I went to Dallas, I was hemming and hawing all week. Do I race? Do I not race? Is it too soon? Is it whatever? And I said, you know what? Nobody really knows I'm racing, so like I'm just gonna do it and see what happens. And I felt better in Dallas than I did in Chicago. So if I part of me is bummed that I didn't feel that good in Chicago because I know I would have nailed it then. Dallas had similar challenges in terms of like horse crowding, and kind of being funneled by somebody that works at the venue to funnel you either right or left around the crowds that were kind of like going in between or trying to get in and out of the venue. So that was new for me in Chicago. So I wasn't used to that. So I'd like veer left, and then, you know, it obviously adds time to that. But yeah, when I came out of Dallas, I felt really strong. I felt really happy with how I did. And I felt like really, really good. And I remember going in feeling like pretty nervous, like about my legs going to hold up, and they did. And even I argue even better than they did in Chicago, even though the time is literally a second different.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, shout out to you because, you know, one thing that I love hearing is just stories of like where people don't necessarily have it that day and they, you know, gut it out or kind of grit through it. It's inspiring to hear that you didn't feel like you had your best fitness that day. And I don't know if you know this or not. I'm sure you've probably looked at your splits, but you finished with a 333 wall ball. So that just tells you that even on your worst day, if you're not feeling it, you still have that weapon in the bag. And then the next week, you followed that up with a 330 wall ball, which was good enough for first overall, and basically identical run time. So that's really cool to see it, and I definitely think is something that people can. I think it's a good reminder that like stay in it even when you're not having your best day. Like you never know what you might pull off. So so that's cool though that you feel like you had a better race in Dallas, but you definitely were compromised. I don't think these people that race every weekend, I don't think that they're doing themselves any favors. So that's, you know, that's cool to see that basically even compromised, you're able to pull off that same performance. So I guess what's next for you? Like you're right there. Like I definitely think that you're someone who I believe, Maria, that you're going to get into the Elite 15, whether it's through the majors or the last chance qualifier. You definitely have the grit and the capability. But what's kind of your next goal? What's the next race that you're eyeing? Are you going to try to get one more in to solidify yourself for Vegas?
Yeah. Yeah. My plan is to get Anaheim in. So we have,
Ooh, Maria, LA and LA/Anaheim have been good to Maria historically, so everybody better watch out.
yeah, that's what I'm hoping for this time around. Do well in LA. It's been a good venue for me. But yeah, I think like because Vegas, I think I sit around 18 right now. I don't know, and Anthony and I have discussed like we don't know that I'll get a roll down for Vegas. So I'm gonna give it a shot in Anaheim to solidify my spot in Vegas. So I want to get pushed up into the top 15,
Yep.
and that's the target for Anaheim. It's always been the target for Vegas is to get into the 15, not get a roll down. And it was always Chicago, maybe Dallas, but for sure Anaheim. So it just ended up happening that I raced all of them or will be racing all of them. And I've never raced this much before either. Just want to caveat that. But yeah, I think I have the fitness for it. I am historically used to a lot of volume now working with a hybrid engine. So I'm like pretty confident in it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It looks like you'd probably I'll leave the heavy math to Anthony because he's way smarter than me, but it looks like if you get into that 63, 62, you should be more than safe and you're definitely capable of that. So well, that's awesome. We're definitely going to be pulling for you here on the show. We'll end with this. I guess, you know, you you do have a unique fitness background. You kind of have done it all. What advice would you give to, you know, someone? I think one of the things that sticks out to me most from this interview is just like you didn't know that you were going to be as good as you were until like one day, like it just kind of happened, which I think is cool. Like that is one of the most inspiring things about HYROX is like they say it's the fitness race for everybody, and so you know you never know. Like you got into this for fun, and now here you are competing, you know, at the pro level. What advice would you give to the age groupers out there, or the fans of the sport, you know, looking to kind of take that next step?
I think the biggest thing would be to not give up, keep working, keep finding what works for you just because, you know, maybe one coaching philosophy or whatever it is, like you keep working for it and be patient. And then good things happen when you just continue to push and continue to find the right formula that works for you. Um, and yeah, and then just stay really focused on it. I think, you know, if HYROX is what you want to do and you want to get into more of an elite ranking for it, then like you need to be all about it. and making sure that everything that you do in your life complements like the person that you want to be, or you know, the athlete that you want to be, taking your recovery seriously, taking your workouts seriously, making sure your nutrition's on track. Like all those pieces add to overall performance and wellness and all that stuff. So making sure that you have all those pieces combined if you are serious about doing really well in the sport.
It's great. It's great. And Maria, if people want to follow along with you, where can they find you on Instagram?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, so at Maria Fecik, or you can do Holistic Athlete FC as well.
Cool. And then because I'm sure people want to know, does the holistic athlete take virtual clients or is it all in person?
Yeah, so we have a lot of remote clients, so all over the world. We train for anything from endurance to HYROX, and then if you are local to Burlington area in Canada, we do have HYROX classes as well.
Amazing. If you want to work with Maria and Mike, reach out on Instagram. I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. Any other shout outs you want to give or anything that you want to plug before I let you get back to your day, Maria?
Um, just like in terms of like you touched on like the community, all the Elite 15 women, all the coaches I've worked with and stuff. Everybody is amazing in the sport. Everybody has a lot of respect for each other. They're so competitive, and I just really appreciate all the people I've met, the coaches I've worked with. Shout out to Anthony as well. Obviously, he's done a lot for me these last few months, and has really helped me finesse kind of like what my race strategy is in being a strong racer. And then just really, yeah, everybody in the community is amazing. So shout out to everybody, all the women in the Elite 15 I compete with and have competed with, and all the people that I've met. You guys are awesome.
Awesome. Well, Maria, like I said, I really appreciate you taking time on your Thursday afternoon to join us. Really appreciate it. And like I said, we'll be rooting for you. Best of luck the rest of the season.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too.